We're taking a trip off the west coast because over 1400 years ago, Clare's Saint Senan is said to have permanently banished the dragons and serpents from Kilrush on the ancient monastic settlement of Inis Cathaigh. Located on the Shannon Estuary, Scattery Island, which was inhabited until 1978, it survived the Vikings, the Normans and rebellions and saw a population boom after the famine, but it officially opened for the tourist season last week. Last year, just below 4,500 people set foot on the historic island, complete with 6 churches, one of only 2 round towers in Ireland with ground entry, graveyards, a lighthouse, a gun battery from the Napeleonic Era and an array as well of thriving wildlife. And another interesting story about one of the serpents that was supposedly banished from Inis Cathaigh is that he landed over in Dolan in West Clare and created that big lake that's serving an awful lot of the population for water as well around the West Clare area. So lots and lots of heritage connected with Scattery Island. Well, Clare FM's Daragh Dolan was among the latest to visit there for the new season, and he began by speaking to the head OPW guide, John Mulqueen.
Well, I suppose the simplest answer is it's the main feature of all the monastic settlements in Ireland, like Clonmacnoise in County Offaly, Glendalough in County Wicklow, Kilmacduagh in South Galway near Garth. It's a feature. You'll find around 6 or 7 churches in their monastic settlements.
We talked about Scattery Island, and I think people don't always think about where the name derives from. Could you tell us where Scattery Island came from, and a bit of the history about the name of Inis Cathaigh as well, because there's a very interesting story surrounding both of those.
Yeah, Inis Cathaigh as in Inis as in island of battles, and Saint Senan, after his travels from Rome, he and through England and Ireland, and he arrived here in 532 to do battle with this mythical demon or dragon, a serpent called Cathaigh, which means battle, and he defeated the serpent from the island, banished him all the way up as far as Dolan Lake, which is up near Miltown Malbay. So it's very much interpreted as, like St. Patrick's story, it's interpreted as a victory for Christianity over paganism, or good over evil. So St. Senan is credited with bringing Christianity to Scattery Island and establishing the monastic settlement back as far as 532.
So St. Patrick gets the credit for driving the snakes out of Ireland. So could we accurately say that St. Senan got rid of the serpents and the dragons from Kilrush?
Definitely so.
That's definitely something that has to get people coming out here. But there's a lot more to it than just meets the eye. Like the Round Tower, which is only one of few that's in the country. The churches out here, the graveyards. We see some of the surnames in the graveyard here. There's Mulqueens, there's Brennans, there's Scanlons, there's Morans. They're the most popular names. And you told me that the prevailing profession was river pilots, which it sounds like such a cool job title. Could you just tell us a little bit more about these families, where they came from in Clare, and maybe how they even might be linked to people today?
Yeah, the main repopulation of Scattery Island took place around 1843. The family names of McMahon and Mulqueen, Scanlon, Brennan, they were located back in Kilbaha. They were river pilots, but they salvaged a large cargo ship called the Windsor Castle in 1843, and there was a long drawn out court case over receiving compensation for the salvage of the cargo ship called the Windsor Castle. So when the court case was concluded anyway, some of the river pilots received £140, some £160, which is an awful lot of money in 1843. And at the time there would have been only probably the Morden family living here from the Strong Knot Kerry name, and also the Herher family from East Clare. And there was a landlord's agent called Marcus Keane who had a summer house on Scattery Island, and he saw the opportunity with all the money the river pilots had back in Kilbaha, so they offered them the opportunity if they wanted to relocate from Kilbaha here to Scattery Island, and the families were delighted to do so. They settled down very well here, and they brought with them a lot of traditions from Kilbaha, like farming, fishing and being river pilots. And the population actually flourished afterwards, then up to in 1881 there was as many as 141 people, which was quite amazing considering it was after the famine times, and when you consider the town of Kilrush suffered so severely. Whereas here on Scattery Island, the population flourished. I suppose the main reasons were the land was very good farming land. It hadn't been farmed much before that. And also they were allowed to fish as well on the shoreline, and also they had income from being river pilots up and down the River Shannon, so that all helped to increase the population here.
And look, of course it's sad that there is no population out here anymore. The only person that's here year round really is the groundskeeper, but it's a place that's completely touched by nature. And that's very unique as well, that you see the daisies, the dandelions, the bluebells here are absolutely thriving. Then Harrier thrives out here. You've rabbits out here. a lot of interesting nature out here.
There is indeed, especially, and then you have the presence of the ground nesting bird hen harrier flying around here as well. So it's they're very suited to, and they find the island very suitable to nest here as well on the island. So they that suits them.
When visitors come out here, what do they find as maybe one of the most interesting takeaways that they wouldn't have known or assumed about Scattery Island in advance?
They probably would have realised it had such a rich history. You know, going back one of the earliest Christian sites in Ireland, when you consider Senan had his monastic settlement in the early 6th century and was a great island as a seat of learning, and one of his most famous pupils then was St. Ciarán of Clonmacnoise. So Scattery Island has the distinction of actually predating Clonmacnoise, and then of course it has the distinctive round tower here, one of only 2 in Ireland, with door at the ground level. Its main role, round tower, would have been, as its name tells us, in Gaelic, as in clog, Teach, as in bell house or bell tower, for ringing the bells and calling the monks into fields into prayer. A symbol of a monastic settlement as well, and also a landmark as well. So it was a good vantage point overhead in viewing.
Would we ever have a service out here, or a mass here, or a celebratory thing out here, anything like that, or a bit of a pilgrimage? Is there anything to honour Saint Senan here year round?
Well, there is, yes. We're standing here in the graveyard, so there's Daniel Graveyard Mass, and this year it's due to be on the 9th of August, and we're in the parish of Kilrush and the diocese of Killaloe. So in the last number of years we've had the presence of Bishop Fintan Monaghan has said Mass here in conjunction with our local parish priest here, Father Michael Collins. So that would be our busiest day of the summer season here.
And John, just very interesting stone here, that, would you even call it a plaque? And just see it's erected by the Kilrush Community Development Limited in memory of the Mulqueen family who were from Scattery Island, and that is in remembrance of all of those who have been lost at sea. And I think that's something that, look, I'm sure a lot of people probably don't know is here, and that's very poignant and nice tribute.
When the islanders started to leave the island, it was last occupied up to 1978. But at that stage, the island had been sold to a retired British Army officer called Major James Wilson, and he had very big plans on Scattery Island to develop it as a holiday centre. But he invested some money on the business, but things went against him, and he got disillusioned, and he decided to sell the island. And a Belgian man bought it by Jean Albert Moorkens, and he didn't do much for Scattery Island, but he decided to sell it in March 1989. And the local Canon Ryan here in Kilrush got information Scattery Island was for sale, so he's very determined to stay in local ownership. So he organised a company here in Kilrush called Kilrush Community Development Limited, with the help of the Office of Public Works and the Diocese of Killaloe and Clare County Council, to come together and buy the island. So after much negotiation with Mr. Moorkens, they purchased the island for £94,500 in September 1989. And once the deal was completed, then the responsibility of the island was given to the Office of Public Works, or vested it in the state, as we say to this day. So that's how the OPW came.
And it's brilliant that the ownership of the island did fall back into local community hands, and eventually end up in the stewardship of the OPW, that we do have it preserved as a heritage site today, and somewhere where we can visit and appreciate the history of it. But when did the last inhabitants leave? Because to think its population actually peaked after the Great Famine is something that is incredible, really.
Yeah, around from 1940s onwards, the schoolhouse closed around 1948, and then a little later on, then the River Pilot station was transferred from Scattery Island over to Kappa in Kilrush, and most of the men living in the island were river pilots, so they transferred over to Kappa, and they purchased houses and lands over the mainland. Once one family started to leave the island, the others followed, until Scattery Island was finally depopulated in 1978. It was a brother and a sister, Patricia and Bobby McMahon, and they left in October 1978. And Patricia McMahon just died last August here in Kilrush, and she was brought out to be buried here on our family grave here in the 19th of August.
Just below 4,500 visitors came out to Scattery Island last year. It has so much to offer. You're relaunching for the visitor season this year. You must be hopeful of growing all the time. Absolutely, yeah. We're really looking forward to the season, and of course with the good spell of weather's coming up next week now, it should be very favourable.
And that is Clare FM's Daragh Dolan on Scattery Island, speaking to head OPW guide John Mulqueen.